So let's kick it off. First of all, can you please introduce yourself to our audience today?
Yes, of course. My name is Nepomuk Nothelfer. I am 28 years old and I'm a lawyer in Germany. Right now, I'm a research assistant and doctoral candidate at the University of Augsburg, which is in Bavaria, Germany. I'm also a lecturer with a focus on labor and employment law and, of course, on esports law. I also research and publish and speak regarding esports law. At the moment, I'm one of the persons who have probably published the most on this topic in the German-speaking area. And at the end of 2019, we decided to found the Research Center for Esports Law. And yeah, we actually just wrapped our annual conference, which was a big success, but I may be biased here, yesterday.
Wow, that sounds amazing. Thank you so much. And I have to say, this is our first time interviewing with IJESPORTS, so it is certainly a privilege having you here today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We were really looking forward to this. What I really wanted to know is, I know you've got your hands in quite a few pies here. What would you say is your primary focus around the esports area?
So esports is what we call a cross-sectional matter regarding to law. There's virtually no area of law that is not involved. Event and broadcasting law, copyright, antitrust, youth protection, international law, you name it. But my area of expertise is labor and employment law and tax law.
What I really want to know was, can you tell us a bit more about the labor law? What is the situation in esports now? Give us a bit of background, because I know many of us don't know much about it, even though it is probably critical to the industry.
Well, maybe first of all, on the situation of law and lawyers in the space. Unfortunately, the professionalization of the industry is still not complete. There aren't many organizations who have heads of legal, like, for example, G2 Esports or Rogue, or maybe the ESL have. So this is why there's hardly any data on how much revenue goes into the space, into the legal counsel or anything alike. However, if you compare the situation with 2018, you can really see there's a significant growth there. More jobs in the industry regarding law, and also more lawyers in law firms dealing with the situation. We have about 40 published research papers in Germany alone. So this is a big leap from the 5 we had in 2018. And I'm not including blog posts or anything like that. So quote unquote real publications.
I have to say that number took me by surprise. I thought it would be half that number at the most. But the interesting thing about it is we're both struggling to find hard data on the legal matters in esports. So honestly speaking, I think that was a big drive for us to start the journal in the first place, where we're seeing lots of research happening across the world. Some of it is high quality, but when it comes down to it, it's very hard to then pinpoint what's actually going on. So
yeah,
I think that's I think where you'll share my interest in trying to really push academia forward in esports through the many different ways that it's possible.
Yeah, we don't really have sources. I mean, we could take our research center as kind of a source, and we have over 30 associated researchers, lawyers from all over Germany and some from Austria, over 10 cooperation partners. We have this huge book project which will hopefully become the German reference work for the German legal system, and we will have about 50 authors. So these are some numbers only regarding Germany, of course. But yeah, there are no real studies, not in Germany, not worldwide. And of course, you're right, there's a huge difference regarding the, well, how do I put that? Regarding the quality of the research. So there are some papers, because you mentioned there's a lot of them, they're like 4 pages long. And these are real legal publications, but kind of an overview, right? So
yes, I think that's what we've seen across the board. I'm not surprised you're seeing it, and hopefully things will continue to improve with both our initiatives going forwards. I really want to know what you find as a special interest for yourself in esports law. What do you think is something that will continue to grow and something that you find particularly fascinating?
This is not only regarding esports law. We're kind of getting into this digital world right now. So one of my favorite books is Ready Player One. I've used to play World of Warcraft for a long time, so I'm really fascinated by digital worlds and how we interact with each other. And what we're seeing in law is that a lot of codes aren't ready for this world. So esports, it is the competition of the digital world. And we don't really have that much ruling on situations like this. We don't really have a lot of laws and codes. So it's so interesting to see how we're trying to get into that without really being experts on it. This is like real pioneer work. And this is especially in esports. One example is occupational safety. We have laws on how long are you able to work as an employee for your employer. And these are codes from over 20 years ago. So there's no way that they're meant for our current situation, where you have to work globally. And when there's someone in China, you cannot have an 11-hour break. You have to have some kind of conversation with him. And this is especially in esports, because we're allowed to work in Germany for an employer for about 8 hours a day. But there's such a huge difference in the quality of work. So someone sitting at a computer working, this will be hard 8 hours. But a professional esports athlete, 8 hours of training, this is so much harder. So there could be a point made where like, okay, maybe you have to tone down what is allowed. But is that realistic? I mean, it's probably not even realistic that professional esports players only play 8 hours a day, right? So these kind of situations are so interesting because you don't want to kill this industry. On the other hand, you have to protect, especially young people. This is unbelievable. This gets me up every morning.
This is where I wanted to lead to very quickly. So thank you for that segue. What I've seen is that legal firms are quickly becoming the closest allies to many esports organizations. And I think a big reason for that is because there is simply so much work to do. The player contracts, the tournament agreements, travel and immigration, sponsorships. Essentially, there needs to be legal work done on pretty much all of these matters. And because it's such uncharted territory, legal firms quickly become pretty much on speed dial for these esports organizations. So did you agree with that kind of assessment, or do you think there's something more to it there?
No, 100%, because I've just read that we're not in the wild west of esports anymore, and this is simply wrong. This is simply wrong. We have some professional organizations. They're really doing their best to comply with the law, everything, but we're in the Wild West. So all the agreements, a lot of them is by handshake. And while there is growth and professionalization 100%, we are not there yet. So to have a lawyer at your side to call, because lawyers aren't, it's not always they come when the situation is over and try to sue or rescue the situations. You should get them involved as soon as possible. So this is 100% the case. And something else, I've just talked about working hours. The big law firms of this world, and this is not a secret either, they're not compliant with this law as well. There's no big shot lawyer only working 8 hours a day. That does not exist. So I think they get the feeling of we're sitting in a similar boat, kind of with kind of vibe. So yeah, but I agree with you 100%.
I think the potential problem that will come around the corner is a potential power divide here, because maybe I'm wrong, but I'm seeing in the traditional situation of there's a legal firm and their client is the esports organization. And so a lot of the legal contracts and agreements will be made with the client being therefore the esports organization and focused in that direction. So when it comes to all these issues that you mentioned around player health and immigration, how will it work when eventually there will be a catch up for when the players are saying, oh, we don't think this is fair? Will it then be down to them to find their own legal advisors to then perhaps fight their corner, perhaps balance it out? Or do you think that the agreements that are being made right now are already considering that issue?
Wow, there's a lot to unpack here.
I apologize, that was a bit of a heavy.
No problem. Well, first of all, the German legal system is pretty strict, so you don't really have the chance to have oppressing contracts compliant with German law. So whenever you feel like you're getting oppressed, there is the way to a lawyer. Just ask him, maybe sue. Even though it's not that easy, because you don't want to be the bad apple in the industry where everyone is like, oh, don't touch him. If there's anything not perfect, he will sue you. So there are a lot of there are different layers to it. We have a huge difference in amateurs and pros, because pros are also streamers or in general content creators. They're the big stars. You don't have to worry about them. This may sound kind of strange, but you don't have to. They earn a lot of money. They do what they love, and they're not, rarely they're oppressed. At least here in Germany, I know the whole Tifo situation, of course, and these rookie contracts, but even those, I mean, it gets worse than that. It's far worse in the amateur scene, because there's close to no development there, and there's a lot of misconduct taking place legal wise. So, but on the other hand, there are lawyers, the big shot lawyers who are really they cost a lot of money, but there are also lawyers who are by heart trying to help the small guys, the Davids, you know. So I don't think that at least in Germany, this will be a huge problem going into the future, but it has been in the past 100%. The one thing you're probably also going at is unions. I'm just guessing here. Unions.
That's right. I was wondering about that.
Yeah. Well, there are real unions, professional unions already existing, and they are looking into esports. Believe me, I talked to a lot of them. There are two problems. There are these. When we take a look, for example, at the Counter-Strike union, there are a lot of problems. It's not quite easy to work with them, from what I've heard, because they're not professional unions like we have in for example, in Germany, or in old industries that exist for years and years. The problem, at least in Germany, is that we have a system for two parties, like employee and employer. But the main powerhouse, legal-wise, because of their IP rights, is the publisher, of course, in esports. So the whole ecosystem, the whole legal system regarding unions doesn't actually work pretty well in Germany with a third party. So there's a lot to do for the lawmaker, actually, to kind of have a second system for that kind of situations. And this will be really, really interesting, and not only have an influence on esports, but on a lot of industries.
That was going to be my next question in a roundabout way, which is, who will take priority? Will it be, because esports is obviously filled with many different organizations, but it's also international, right? So I'm imagining there's going to be a lot of confusion when a law made in South Korea around working conditions will clash with a law made perhaps in Europe.
Yeah.
And so then will it be, as you may have said, down to the game publisher's legal team to decide who sort of has priority here?
It's actually not that easy, because every legal system wants to apply. So In Germany we have, or in Europe, because it's a European issue, we have different laws stating in which situation which legal system will apply. But of course, at the same time, every national legal system wants to apply, and this is actually a huge problem. Not only when it comes down to which law applies, but also how to manage it in practice, how to execute it. So this is one of the biggest struggles, the biggest problems in the esports industry.
We'll have to wait and see, as we don't know right now.
It comes down to where you sue.
Okay.
It comes to where you sue, and then you will have the process there, and you get a title. So good luck getting your money from a corporation regarding betting, for example, in Malta. So
Okay.
this is actually the problem, the execution, not getting the title, not winning the case, but where do you win it? And
What I really wanted to also know is you have a background and a current interest in research. Can you tell us a bit more about what you're looking into at the moment?
Yeah, so my main focus is on labor and employment law and how the current labor and employment code or codes in Germany kind of are applying to the esports situation. The first publication I wrote is, are esports athletes employees, or can they be? Because if they're not, there is no employment code applying, and there's a lot of stuff you can do. You're not prevented from doing them by law. This was the first one. And then, of course, occupational safety. It's so interesting. People always say, okay, esports, this is League of Legends, Counter-Strike, but of course, there are huge parts of esports. That's not all. We have virtual reality esports. And right now we need to get laws regarding not only the current situation, but the future situation, because we have a rapid development. And this is so interesting. Not every esports is played sitting, or sitting in a chair that doesn't move when we think about sim racing or stuff like that. And there's so many different ways you can hurt yourself as an employee, and so much stuff an employer has to do. This, for example, was one of my publications as well. So this is my focus.
And I know that a lot of people want to do exactly what you're doing now. Do you have any advice into how they can get into your area of expertise and work?
Well, in Germany, it's pretty easy. Just contact us. We're so open. Everyone who's trying to do something and is doing it with some degree of quality, we will look into them, and we will invite them as associated researchers. We will work with them. We're trying to create opportunities in the space. So this is the number one thing. Outside of Germany, there are some associations to turn to. So this should be the first way, because those people are into in the space for some years, and they know other people. They know how to get money. So this is probably the first way.
Yeah, that's definitely what I've found. People have been quite open and interested in learning about each other, and as cliche as it is, trying to move forward in the right direction, learn from mistakes made in similar areas such as traditional sports and whatnot. Is there anything you want to tell the audience that we haven't already covered?
I mean, we've talked before, and I loved your biggest struggles question. So there are 4 things I've thought about, which are my personal biggest struggles doing what I do right now. So the number one thing is that may sound strange, but you're not always taken seriously at universities when you say, okay, I do research on gaming or esports. I mean, gaming as a whole industry, entertainment-wise, 160 billion, is bigger than is bigger than movies or music, but people seem to not know that. And
it's definitely.
Secondly, there's a lot of discussion about the topic because esports is a buzzword. but not a lot of people really know about the industry and its ways. Therefore, it's of course necessary to educate, but to educate on different levels. So this naturally also applies to the legislator, the lawmakers. And believe me, this is not always an easy job, not easy thing to do. So this is something. There's much lobby work in the space for and against esports, but not as much neutral and objective research. And this is why you kind of always are in the middle ground between two extremes. For example, sports and esports. So there's always one side saying, okay, we don't like your research in that and that regard, but we love it in the other regard. And the last thing, last but not least, and this is, in my opinion, the most important one. So I'm a gamer and a sportsman by heart. And it's probably the biggest challenge to ignore everything personal and try to be as objective as possible. And I find this incredibly interesting and hard. And I really do notice how I grow on that challenge every day. And this is probably the most interesting thing of it all. When I'm like, okay, no, there's no way that the youth will have a problem with that, but maybe you have to be more objective on that matter. And yeah, this is the most interesting thing.
I think that's very true. I think that's part of the value of getting things peer reviewed, so that your beliefs and your understanding of the sector is as independently verified as we can get. Because otherwise we start to continue living in the bubble of believing certain things that may not be as true as we think they are. So yeah, I completely agree. It's we do sometimes take things a bit more personally than we should. So it's a really important thing that we go through the legal matters and we go through the academic channels in as high standards as we can.
And this is why you guys are so important, because this is one last thing. It's amazing what you guys doing, and this is exactly what the space needs: research that is close to practice, and it does not take place in that ivory tower. So all there is to say is thank you so much for your work, and thanks for having me.
Thank you very much for giving up your time in this interview. I know a lot of people will find this very interesting. I will try and put your contact details below if you're happy for people to reach out. I know a few people do want to learn more about your industry in particular. Thank you again very much for giving up your time and helping us all understand a bit more about what's going on in esports and the legal matters around it.
Thank you.